Welcome everybody. I'm here with my dear friend Mark Kevin Charlton-Davis, and today we're going to be talking about his experiences with indigenous spiritual traditions in Africa and how he initially became interested in and exposed to some of those traditions. So I'm so grateful to have you.
Oh, thank you.
With me today. What a privilege. Love you so much.
I love you too, my brother.
And I initially encountered you during an experience that I was having where I was going to a little shop outside of Piedmont that had some indigenous African spiritual tradition, literature, and herbs and materials. And I came across your book, Thoughts from the Underworld, then, and I bought this book at that store, and I was blown away. By the way, this is a picture of Mark around the time when he wrote this book. And I was just blown away, and I thought, I would love to meet this man and learn with him and understand where his insights came from. And then there was a time when I almost met you at the Oakland flea market, failed that time. And then some years later, one of my friends ended up bringing you to my house. And that's how we finally at last met. So I want to ask you a little bit about your childhood, your family situation, what your religious exposure as a child. Anything you want to share about that?
Oh, yes. Yeah, my mother is my primary example of spirituality for me. I think my first word that I learned when I was a baby was Taurus. And she taught me about horoscopes and things like that. But she was primarily involved with anything to do with, like, there was the African American politics happening at that time. We were in Santa Monica. And so there was a lot of Black Power stuff. She had the afro, and she was expressing herself as a guitarist, a solo guitarist at the time. And that experience was kind of overwhelming for me. My father died when I was 4 years old. He was killed in a car accident. And that day, I relived that day almost every day. I can remember that experience like it's a constant. I think that's probably my primary driver for wanting to go to Africa and reconnect with those links and find out, well, what is an African American? What is an African? My father was from Guyana, but what is that? What does that really mean? So I wanted to explore all of those things since I was young.
Your mother was a very powerful, creative, and from what I understand, an extremely intelligent woman.
That's my consensus.
Right?
Yeah. She was also very beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah. I wish I could have, matched her in some way with some of my mates, because she was very beautiful and very intelligent, and also really funny. She used to close kitchen cabinets with her feet. The top cabinets.
No kidding.
She would do crazy things, and she had a Bullwinkle voice. There's always copying Bullwinkle.
The cartoons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of seances at our house. We had Haitian priestesses that would come over, and there's some really weird childhood experiences I've had around that. With my mom being a part of it.
Anything you'd like to share about one of those experiences?
Yeah, there's one that stands out. This is after my father died, maybe about a year or so after. And these people all came over. Sorry, let me retract. The priestess came over. Now, she's like almost a homeless person. Sometimes we'd see her on the street. I could never figure out who or what she was, but she was a priestess, right? And so she came over. And so when she came, my sister and I, we both hid under the couch and watched the whole thing from the couch, underneath the couch. Maybe, I don't know how many hours or I didn't know time at the time. But I remember my sister falling asleep. I stayed awake and I watched. And then suddenly, like, the door opened and a bunch of people came in. And one of them was my dad, who already passed away, but only the top half of him. The bottom half was missing. And they all came and sat down on the couch where we were, right underneath. So I remember the legs, and I remember the other chairs and people sitting over there, and they were talking, and then they left. And I never connected with my mom. I wish she stayed alive long enough for me to have this conversation, but I wish I could have talked to her more about that, because shortly after that, she was so frightened that she dove into Christianity and became a Jehovah's Witness. And so completely shut down on any of those conversations. So as a kid, I never talked about it, and as an adult, I wanted to but couldn't. But that was a very deep experience for me.
Yeah, I mean, with whom could you explore these things if not your mother herself, right?
As a
That's
witness
tragic.
too.
Yeah. So did you then become exposed to the Jehovah's Witnesses?
I did. Yeah.
Were you raised in that faith, or?
Yeah, from the time I was about 8 or 9, mostly 9 probably. We started with that. They had their religious people come to our house a couple times a week to train us on the Bible, learn all of the Bible books by heart.
Wow.
Scriptures, I still remember them because they really drill it hard into you.
Wow.
Yeah.
The whole Bible?
66. Yeah, not the books, the names of the books, and also and several scriptures.
Sure.
But mostly just the names of the books as a kid, right?
I'm just going to make a quick adjustment here. Please feel free to continue.
Okay.
So describe the transition between the time you began to become a Jehovah's Witness and what happens next in your life.
Yeah. So the ladies that came to our house, they were really nice ladies. I'll never forget them. Right, three ladies, and I mean, the religion's convincing, and you have nothing else to go.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
And they throw the fear into you that you're going to die if you don't do it. So, when you're 9 years old or 10 years old, you just follow. And,
it's very weaponized, right, against our vulnerable feelings.
Yeah. And my mom, I mean, when she left California after that seance and moved to South Carolina, we were there for about a year, then we moved up to New England. But the reason for her leaving was because of that seance. But she left everything behind, all of our clothes, all of our books. There was no packing. Wow. She just ran to the airport.
Wow.
So it was traumatic for us because I had a Dr. Seuss collection of books, and it's still traumatic for me missing those books, So that was replaced with the Bible by the time we landed in Massachusetts. And so I studied the Bible really hard. That was my book.
And about what age did things start to veer away from Christianity for you?
15 years old.
And what? Yeah. Talk about that transition for you.
Yeah. So by the time I was 15, I was really involved in the discoverers, world discoverers, and all the different, Vasco da Gama, Magellan, and Columbus, and all the different ones, right? And so I wanted to. Every time they talked about the natives, I wanted to know more about the natives,
Right.
So
unfortunately, white guys are writing all these books.
Yeah, the natives are dying left and right.
Christians.
Yeah,
right.
Both. Christianity.
Right,
yeah. So I was 15 years old, and I designed a necklace with fake shark's teeth made out of balsa wood and painted them white. And
that's funny because I had a shark tooth necklace around 13 too. It was really important. Like Jaws was going on.
Right.
I wrote a 15-page report on sharks with drawings of the different species and blah blah. But I got you. So you got this necklace.
Yeah. So I carved it out of balsa wood and used primer paint to make it white. And I went to school, and it caused so much controversy that I started feeding off the controversy. Either people making fun of it, or teachers telling me I can't be wearing that, and all of this stuff. And it was like, this is cool. So that was probably one of my first points of an intersection in the road's trajectory.
Now you're almost saying that negative attention was better than none. Am I getting that wrong?
I think you're correct, because the nun attention was like being this conforming, conforming to what I'm learning, and there was no varying, there was no dating allowed, and girls were discovering me, and I didn't know what that was, so I kind of dove down into a shell, and a couple times that I tried to express myself to a girl didn't work out too well.
Yeah.
There was a girl from Iran, and I think I wrote a letter of love or something to her, and she did. I mean, we were friends.
Uh-huh.
I thought that meant something. If he hadn't meant being friends, it didn't mean that, So that was my first lesson there. And
I had similar.
About the same time.
I had similar trouble. I would write. I would make up a code, and then give the girl the key to the code.
Oh yeah.
And then write her a letter in the code. I was trying to do encryption when I was 9.
Oh wow!
Right? I was trying to encrypt our love letters.
Really?
Right? Yeah.
You were a smart girl.
Yeah. But the girls kind of looks at me like,
really?
What is this about?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
I get it though. So, rebellion.
Yeah, the rebellion kind of started. I started getting. There was no information on Africa, But back then, World Book Encyclopedia, it showed a Caucasian face with took up a third of the page, and then every other race was at the bottom of the page in these little, Jungle Book looking little figures.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I just wanted to understand more about Africa. Couldn't find hardly any. In my little school, my area was Chicopee, Massachusetts.
Wow.
And Chicopee's outside of Springfield, really small, right? Couldn't find anything. But, I would find about Tahitians and the Maori people and the Hawaiians and things like that. So I started adapting those cultures into my own because it was close enough, right? So I kind of went with that. And when I started learning about kahunas and, the power of the gods, and how the gods were actual elements, not separate little ghosts or spirits. That was my first introduction. It was actually, I think it was reading Captain Cook's books. I mean, not information from Captain Cook, and also Paul Gauguin married a girl, Teha Amana, and Mana means power, right? And listening to her story, even though she was just a little girl when he met her, but listening, I tried to glean from wherever I could find these little points of native spirituality. And that started forcing me to make some decisions. So, one time I came in with wearing pants that were cut kind of low, right? Kind of African style, right? They're called frugu in Ghana. And I wore that, and I wore an African flag tie, but just the colors, no flags.
Right.
And I did a sermon, and after I was called down and confronted with the elders that was inappropriate, and I wanted to ask why. They said, "Well, it's against our regulations and blah blah blah." And it was like, you're not speaking clearly to me as to why it's wrong. You're not telling me why it's wrong.
Yeah, you're saying essentially because we said so.
Yeah.
Right.
And that really irritated me. So I started asking more questions, not at that time, because usually when I'm confronted like that, I'm in shock and almost teary-eyed and, trying to understand what's going on, especially when I was young. And but I came back eventually, and I asked them a question. I wanted to know that I'm going to have navels, And when they started accusing me of apostasy for asking those kind of questions. And that's when I decided, this is not working out. So even though I stayed with the religion a couple more years after that, I think it was maybe 25 or 26 by the time I left it.
Well, it becomes so important in your life, right?
Yeah.
Because there's high social coherence, and there's something that resembles a community, and people's at least pretending to take care of each other, and all of this kind of stuff. Where outside the religion, it's very difficult
Empty.
for us to have
Yeah.
those very important features of our lives.
Yeah.
I'm with you. So
Yeah.
a couple years you kept going, and
Yeah, outside of the religion, they call it the gnashing of the teeth in the darkness. You're inside, you're outside looking in the window with gnashing your teeth because you're cold, right?
yeah, we're terrified.
It's a biblical scripture, but they use it with themselves that way. And I just everybody I knew that was my friend was a Jehovah's Witness,
Right.
and everybody that wasn't that I knew, I never associated with them. So I didn't know how to make that cross-pollinization until I became a machinist in New Hampshire, and I started meeting some crazy people, like, car mechanics, with like Corvettes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's when I started realizing, there's other parts of the world besides the Bible and dogma. It's like I can, get into hot rods, things like that, and airplanes, and
Yes.
So I really started expanding at that point, and along with that, my attitude started changing as to what I needed to conform to, because it had to make sense, and literally that's what drove me to Africa. Was trying to find what is the source of humanity, what is the source of our religion and our science, and is it there or is it not there? How does it make sense to me? When it was weird when I actually went to Africa, they never considered me they would say it, that, oh yeah, you're African, you're one of our brothers, right? But no, because once I started learning the language, I understood what they were saying.
Yes.
They would still call me Nasara Kung Kung, which meant like half white. White black is really what it means. White black. Yeah, white black.
White first.
Yeah, white first.
Right, yeah.
Exactly.
Huh.
And totally understandable. My mentor...
Well, you were American.
I was American.
Yeah.
But more than that, because my mentor, when he left Burkina Faso and went to Europe and came back, he was born and raised there. He's pure-blooded African. He left and came back. The village wouldn't take him back because of his influence. They called him Nasara as well. So it's not even just, it's not the culture or the skin or anything. It has to do with your village and your, like
you don't have a place.
Yeah.
Where are you? There's no land that is where you are from.
Yeah.
Right? You're not from this land where we live.
Right.
This village where we live.
Yes, and our parents and great-grandparents and everybody are buried here.
Yeah, and the forest is over there, and the mountain is over there, and the river is over there.
Yes.
Where
And those rivers and mountains are integral with the ancestors. So when they say La Terre, I'm going to call upon the power of La Terre. They're talking about the earth. They're talking about their ancestors that are in that earth, in the water, in the nature and trees and mountains.
Yes, not just the soil.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And it doesn't mean that, okay, well, my grandfather was married here, so now there's power. No, there's probably, tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years of power developing from those people in that one spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Focus.
That's what makes a difference.
Over time. A mountain of power is there because of all the time.
For them.
Yeah, for them.
Sure. Yeah. That's why I never understood African Americans, because it's like we want it, and I did the same thing. We want to adopt into Oshu and all these different things, but those are ancestors of the other people, other villages. We can't just like, oh, this is African, so it's us.
Yes. It's the same problem with the word escapes me. Capturing the cultural milieu and language and so on of other people, right? The same problem.
Yeah. There's a limit to what you can do with that.
Okay, so you're 26. You're leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses, and you start working on cars, and you realize like, oh, there's this other world.
Yeah. Working in a body shop.
Working in a body shop.
Yeah.
Working on engines,
Yeah,
probably too.
working as a mechanic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where was that going on?
New Hampshire. Well, Massachusetts, that's right after high school. My high school was a vocational high school.
Oh, yeah.
So I graduated as a car mechanic.
Copy.
Yeah. And then, so the first guy I worked for was a Jehovah's Witness. Had a beautiful wife, had a beautiful business. I think he was cheating on her. So that fell apart. And I'm not surprised because I had to quit the job because this old lady came in to get her car repaired. And back in the 70s, the rust would eat away all the metal around the fenders and things like that, right? So she needed this stuff repaired. He had me filling it with newspaper and then putting some kind of tape over it and then bondoing over it. And it's like, I can't do that. I just can't. I couldn't do it. I wasn't able to do it. I had to leave.
Do you mean you couldn't do it ethically?
Yeah. I just couldn't understand.
It's just a bad. You feel bad about doing this kind of fake repair.
I didn't understand it. I couldn't understand it. And at the time I wasn't suffering. I was still living at home. But that was right after high school. Yeah.
So back to when you're 26.
Yes.
What are some of your first introductions to the road that you would then follow?
Probably one of the primary ones. Okay, so I did get married before I was 26. I got married because I had sex before marriage. And the elders told me I had to get married or else I wouldn't speak to my mother ever again or my sister or anyone else in my family.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I married her, and then, I think 6 months later, we filed for divorce. She was 10 years older than me with 3 kids, right? Already had a life, had a house, everything. And that wasn't for me,
Sure.
So I left that, and then by the time I was 26, I met another girl, and when I got involved with her, I got disfellowshipped as a Jehovah's Witness because of having sex after marriage.
Basic thing is excommunicated, right?
Yeah, same thing, exactly. But she exposed me at the age of 25, 26. She exposed me to Grateful Dead, drugs, alcohol, traveling, going different places, doing things, camping. All the stuff I mean, my first wife exposed me to camping too, but this girl did it a different way. We went to a lot of pork roasts, pig roasts, and things like. It was a great life, listening to Neil Young in the woods with these guys.
Wow.
It was a really great experience. So that was a bit in Pink Floyd and stuff like that. It was Led Zeppelin. All of that was brand new to me.
Wow.
I never heard it before. Yeah, and so that was a major change in my life. What was that? Still no African relationship. There was no experience there, with the exception of, so my mom dated a person after my father died, Ed Plupampu, a very famous chief from Ghana. And he would come over to the house often. And I would see him play the drums in Venice Beach, on the beach, So there was Ed, and then there was Joseph Kwanzaa, another Ghanaian. He was a Jehovah's Witness. He exposed me to Bob Marley. Big mistake. He's an elder as a Jehovah's Witness to this day, but he exposed me to Bob Marley and Peter Tosh and all of that stuff, and groundnut stew and wearing furugu, and wearing African traditional clothes, and and banku, which was extremely important. My mom used to make banku, but he really showed me banku. It's a cornmeal mush that's in a ball, and you have it with the boiled chicken. It's really, really, really delicious. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so all of that stuff, those were gems for me that I was collecting as I was growing up. And then, 26, I think around between 26 and 29, I met my next wife. And she was French, Canadian, really, really pretty young girl. And she was a Jehovah's Witness. But that allowed me to get reinstated so I can, if I married her, right? I got reinstated and was able to speak to my mom again after 4 years.
Oh.
Yeah. So we did that, and I to this day I still love her. She was really special, but I couldn't do the Jehovah's Witness thing anymore. The more I grew away from that, the more I grew away from her and everything about that stuff. So I left her. Yeah, and yeah, so that's 26. When I left her, I got involved with an African American girl, first girlfriend ever. She caught me by surprise, you know. She chased me down, but she did it in such a cute way. She it was during a snowstorm, and she was saying that she was out of heat and needed help. You know, there was fireplace wouldn't work, and I had to drive through a snowstorm to get there. She just wanted me to come over. I almost lost my life because I'm sliding down these hills and things in a VW bus. You know,
so there's something good waiting at the end of that drive.
I know, at the end of the tunnel. But yeah, but she exposed me to Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, but mostly the Malcolm X side. You know, she's the one that encouraged me to go to the Million Man March with the 5%ers, which were Malcolm X's like defense team. You know, I got a chance to ride on a bus with them.
Wow.
And go to the Million Man March for Farrakhan at the time, and you know, getting exposed to more African American books about our culture and stuff like that. A lot of it I didn't completely understand at the time still, because I kept thinking, okay, well, that's African American, yeah, but I want to know where it's from. I want to know what, you know, I wanted to keep going. So,
where's the origin?
Yeah. And it was right around that time is when I found Mali Doma's book, Mali Doma Some's book on of water and spirit. And I couldn't put that book down. That was around 97, 98. Yeah. I was ready to leave everything behind and find him. I didn't know where he was. But I wanted to find, I knew it said San Francisco, California or something on the back of his book, right? So I painted some houses and did some work. I got a chance to work with some Tibetan monks building walls, stone walls. They worked all day, all night, nonstop, never took a break, carrying stones.
Where was this?
In New Hampshire. I'm sorry, in Vermont. Yeah, at a friend of mine's house. Just, not really heavy stones, but it was constant, nonstop. Never. The nuns were there too. Never took a break. The girls never took a break. So all of that was like, those were gems that were adding.
Feeding you.
Yeah.
The soup is getting enriched.
Yeah.
A little bit here, a little bit there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then Some.
Yeah, and then Some. And so I felt like I was getting that woke thing, right? Where it's, this makes sense now. Now I know why they didn't have a navel. They didn't exist. They were there. It was like a dawning for me, in the stories of what happened to Mala Doma, a lot of it was very similar to me in different ways, but very similar process of getting initiated into understanding, And so it was a turning point.
Well, say some more about that.
Yep.
What was it about his experiences? If you can help me understand what resonated and with what it resonated in your experience. Like, obviously you had this very shocking experience that scared your mother silly as a child, where you actually saw dead people coming in, the room.
Yeah.
And you saw them. Yeah. Right? So, did you have other experiences on your own before you encounter Mali Doma? Just walk us through a couple of the things that may have happened to you that were unique to you and made you have questions. Anything you care to share?
There was nothing that can top that one. There was nothing strong. Yeah. That was maybe I was 7 or 8 years old when that happened. Somewhere between 5 and 8. Somewhere like that. But nothing has happened like that since.
Any non-ordinary experiences at all?
Nothing that I can't explain or might have been my imagination.
I mean, that last bit's a little rough because what isn't our imagination, actually, right? But even with the people coming in
Yeah, that was
You believe
incredibly
though
real.
that
Yeah.
wasn't your imagination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can't help it. I was just a kid.
Sure.
But it was just as real as talking to you right here.
Yeah, I believe.
And
All right.
in Africa, there were things that happened. But,
Yes.
but
We'll get to some of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But you identified with something deep in Molydoma. Like I myself had a kind of a vaguely similar experience around the same time, 98, 99, 97 to maybe 2000. I was reading Carlos Castaneda's work.
Oh, yeah.
And this made sense to a part of me that had never really had a voice, right, in my life. And there were certain specific suspicions and questions that I had held throughout my life that when I encountered Castaneda, boom, it's like, maybe I should just go to South America and find, or find Castaneda.
So the person that was working with the Tibetans, building the stone wall on his property, he was a follower of Castaneda. So he introduced me to Carlos, and I read a lot of those books. One of the things that really caught me was when they was talking about the Native Americans having to apologize to the trees before cutting them down. And that was like so beautiful. And that was one of the things in Molydoma's book that I understood, was that the trees being
I understood
alive.
this too, yes. Yeah.
Like living beings.
So, yes, not just living beings, but almost like living beings who are doorways.
Yes, they travel.
Right, they travel, and they are a traveling way.
Yes.
And this kind of thing, yes.
And they can instantly connect with other...
Any tree, right, you can go, it's a network.
Yeah.
When my friend was in South America and talking to an indigenous medicine man there in a little village, the medicine man said, back in the United States, you guys have this thing, the internet, but we have something way better than that. Right? And I don't think, it's hard for moderns to understand this, but it's a very important principle. It's the kind of thing you hope we could teach our children, that everyone should understand. That nature is a traveling, and it's a traveling family of networks, right? And you can, anyway. All right, so you encounter Molydoma. What happens next?
Yeah, so one of the other things, the experiences that he had that I related to was the grandfather having the souls of people that have passed away in little gourds up in the ceiling, hanging from the ceiling on ropes, little gourds of spirits and stuff. I completely understood that because when we left California, we got on the plane and we were rushing. I was trying to dress like Michael Jackson, so I had the gold bell-bottom pants and my afro was out. I was trying to look like Michael Jackson. But we landed in South Carolina, first time on a plane, watching the sun go down, seeing it as I was landing. And got a chance to meet my grandfather. We had 83 acres of land. He lived on one end, my grandmother lived on the other end. But he lived with his mom out in the middle of the woods, out in the middle of nowhere. And so once in a while I'd get brave enough because it was hard because there was always escaped convicts. So you always heard hound dogs and police, going through. So I was always afraid to go out there and afraid to go back, But I did it. And made a bow and arrow out of pine branches and stuff like that. Thought that would help. But I got to see my grandfather and I was so afraid to go in, but I could see he had cans hanging from the ceiling. Because he was the local root doctor.
Okay.
Yeah, and even though my mom...
Is this your mother's dad?
My mother's dad.
Okay.
Yeah. And
what was his name?
Jasper.
Okay.
Jasper James. Yeah, he won the what do you call it? Festival every year for vegetables and farm, fruit, for having the largest squash and watermelon. He would win those contests every
He was getting help.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, he had a lot of science around it, and he worked as a full time. That's seasonal, but it was full time as for Barnum and Bailey as a magician.
Really?
Yeah.
What an interesting combination.
Yeah.
Root doctor and magician and farmer.
Yeah.
And husband and grandfather. And
as far as I know, that's it. I don't know of any other skills that he had. But,
wow. A magician.
Yeah.
That's so ironic.
Yeah.
Right? Because he's doing probably the phony stuff for the circus.
Yep.
And then the real stuff for
he did at home. It had to be secret because of the Christianity. They would have hung him at the time.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, I follow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you get to meet him, and
Yeah.
what happens?
Yeah, he was, you know.
I mean, does he talk to you about
No,
anything?
no, not at all.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. No, I was amazingly afraid of him. He was, my mom was super tall. I think she was only 6'1", but as a little kid, she just, you know.
Yeah, towering.
Yeah, he was way taller than her.
Oh,
And he had ice blue eyes, you know, ice, like silver blue eyes, you know.
wow.
Yeah, so he dark skin, a dark black skin. So I don't know what to say about him. He was shockingly interesting. I wish I could have learned more, everything about him, but I never got the opportunity other than to meet him a couple times. Yeah.
But you saw the cans.
Yeah, I saw the cans. He had everything in this house covered with white sheets. Which you do that religiously, especially with African religions. You do that, especially during certain ceremonies. Everything's covered. You know, the mirrors are covered. Everything's covered. Yeah.
Why is that?
It's like, I'm not quite sure, but I always understood it to be it's like you want the spirits to not see themselves when they come to visit. Yeah. That's kind of how I understood it. Yeah.
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah. But so I would, after that, I'd go near his house. I'd look at it from a distance, and I would try to rabbit hunt and stuff like that around his place, but I never went there again. Yeah. Yeah. He was a slave. He was born under indentured slavery, indentured servitude. He ate out of a pig trough growing up as a kid. With other kids, they would all eat out of the pig trough.
They were indentured servants?
Yeah.
Where, do you know?
South Carolina. Yeah.
Wow. In like what, the 30s, the 20s?
My mother was born in 1937.
Oh, okay.
So maybe the 20s or 10s. Yeah.
And what do you know about the indentured servants? And their, like, how did they become indentured? What was going on?
I don't know much about it, other than that a lot of it has to do with debt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And unfair business practices.
Yeah, it can be passed on family to family.
Yeah.
You're just born into slavery because your parents owed money or something.
And he had a lot of land. Everybody wanted that land. You know, it was right on Highway 20.
Wow.
They finally ended up getting it. Yeah, but it was prime land. Yeah.
All right, we'll take a little break here, and then we will return. You okay?
Oh, I'm good. Cool. Yeah, thank you.